Hey everyone, Ben from Bachphotography here, back with another video, and today we're going to be talking about my favorite lens that I've ever used ever. And if you don't have one of these lenses, it doesn't matter if you're a beginner or if you're a professional photographer, I really recommend investing a little bit of money in getting one of these lenses because they are my favorite and they are a super versatile lens. And that lens is the 50mm f1.4. So if you're new to the channel, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy what you're seeing so you don't miss out on anything in the future. And let's get into the photo shoot I did here with my 50mm lens, and let's talk about why I think this is the best lens for you to get if you don't have one at the moment. So I'm here by the water with Laura Roberts, and I'll leave her Instagram in the description if you'd like to check out more of her work. And I'm also going to leave in the description a link to all the raw files from this photo shoot if you would like to edit some of the photos you're seeing here as well. So we used a 50mm f1.4 lens for pretty much the entirety of this photo shoot. I'm going to show you only photos that I used the 50mm 1.4 with. And I really like the 50mm because it is such a versatile lens and you can really use it for a whole bunch of different types of photography. So in this particular photo shoot, we are doing portrait photography, and a 50mm is a really good normal focal length, not too wide, not so narrow, so it's really good for showing off a bit of the background, but still drawing focus to your subject. But a 50mm is really good not just for portrait photography, it's good for things like landscapes, general purpose photography, you can use it for street photography, pretty much anything you can use a 50mm lens for, apart from maybe something like wildlife or sports photography. But that isn't really why I think this is my favorite lens of all time. The main reason I really like this lens is because it is so incredibly cheap for what you're getting. So you're getting a really low aperture prime that's going to offer you a lot of light into your camera sensor, and also it's going to give you super blurry backgrounds and really sharp images for the things that are in focus. It's doing all this for an incredibly low price. So you can get a Canon 50mm 1.4 secondhand for only a couple $100. If you want to spend a little bit more money and get something a little bit sharper, you can get the Sigma 50mm, and this is offered on pretty much every single camera format you could like. So you can get it on Canon, you can get it on Nikon, you can get it on Sony. I'm not sure if you can get it on Fuji. Please leave in the comments if you know whether you can get it on Fuji, but personally I'm not sure. So this is a really great lens, not only because of its versatility, but also because it is just so incredibly cheap. And if you're using just the kit lens, for example, or maybe you have the kit lens and then a long zoom lens, having a prime that offers you the low aperture of f1.4 is really going to give you another weapon in your arsenal to take a whole bunch of different styled photos compared to what you could get on something like the kit lens or on a zoom lens that has a higher aperture maximum of something like f4 or f3.5. At those apertures, you're really not going to get the shallow depth of field that you could with this 50mm, and that just means that you're going to have more flexibility as a photographer, and you're going to be able to get different types of photos and also be able to get better photos easier in low light situations. So now let's have a look at some of the photos that we got in this area and have a look at some of the details of the photos and break them down a little bit, and then we'll move on to the next location. So in this photo, you can really see all the reasons why I love the 50mm f1.4. You can see that the background is super blurry and not distracting at all, and it's really drawing focus to our model Laura here, who is in the foreground nice and sharp. You can see that the background is super blurry, but we still get a super sharp image in the foreground because that is where we're focusing, and the lower the aperture you have, the more blurry the background is going to be compared to your subject. If I was shooting on something like a 24mm 1.4, we'd still get a blurry background, but because this lens isn't wide angle and we still have some longish focal length on a 50mm lens, we're still getting some nice compression in the background, but also it's not a super long lens, so we're still able to see the background and get a good idea of the landscape in general of this photo, which gives us a little bit more context and makes the image even better. I really like shooting at f1.4 because even though we have Laura here in focus, parts of her skin like her cheeks and the back of her right arm are going to be a little bit more blurry than her eyes are going to be, and that means that her skin is going to look even smoother than it is, and that's going to be flattering to her overall appearance. So here is the second place that we shot. We only shot here for about 20 or 30 seconds just because the lighting wasn't looking very flattering on Laura's face. So we just got a couple shots that I will show you right now, and then we'll move on to the next location. So here we are at the final location, and we only managed to get about 5 or 10 minutes of shooting here, just because you can see in the video the winds were really starting to pick up and it was almost hurricane level winds by the time we'd finished with this photo shoot. So before we look at any more photos and go into Photoshop and actually edit one of these photos, let's just go over a couple more things I really like about the 50mm lens. Because you're using a normal focal length, and that means that it doesn't require a whole bunch of glass elements inside the lens to get an image, a 50mm lens is typically quite a lightweight lens and it's easy to carry around. So it works really well with my mirrorless A7R2, isn't too chunky, and it's really nice and easy to maneuver. One final thing I really love about the 50mm is that it's very fast to autofocus, so if you're using autofocus for your photography, you're going to be very surprised with how good a 50mm lens focuses, especially the Sigma 50mm lens, which is the one I'm using today. And I'm going to leave in the description a link to all the camera equipment I used on this photo shoot, and you'll also see a link there to the 50mm if you want to look at it a little bit closer and see some of its technical specifications. So let's have a look at some of the images we got in this area, and then we're going to jump into Photoshop and look at one image in particular and go through the editing steps I did on this photo. So I really like this photo because I think that Laura's green dress really works well with the foliage behind her, but I think that she isn't sort of lost in the foliage, even though she's wearing a dress that's almost the same color as the leaves. And the reason for this is because we're shooting at such a low aperture, that leaf and that foliage in the background is super blurry, whereas her dress is still relatively sharp. And this is the power of the 50mm. If you were using something like the 18-55 kit lens, you would struggle to make the background this blurry, and that would mean that it would be more difficult to make Laura pop from the background and be nice and sharp in the foreground with the background nice and blurry and undistracting. So this is another reason why I really love using the 50mm lens, particularly right stopped open at f1.4 or 1.8 or f2 or something like that. But the lower you go, the blurrier the background is going to be, and the sharper your subject is going to be compared to the background, meaning that they're going to be the center of attention and they're not going to be lost in with everything else. So now let's jump into Photoshop and edit one of these photos, and let's go through all the editing process that I did on these photos to make them look like this. And if you haven't already, if you've got this far in the video, make sure to subscribe. It really helps me out quite a lot, so thank you very much for subscribing. Okay, so here we are in Camera Raw, which is a part of Photoshop. First thing we're going to do is just add some clarity to the entire image, make all of those mid-tone contrasts pop. Next thing we're going to do is just going to change the color balance slightly just until we get the right colors. Because everything is so green, we might actually have to add or remove a little bit of that green later on just to make everything look about right. So that's about right there. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a little bit more exposure, drop the highlights down very slightly, and also add some shadows and some blacks as well. And adding highlights and dropping shadows is kind of the same as adding contrast. So the next thing we're going to do here, just zoom in on the eyes, make sure they're sharp. They're not perfectly sharp, but they're okay, I think. Could have been a little bit sharper, but I think we can get away with it. The next thing we're going to do here is just add some exposure and also some clarity into the eyes here. And then reset our brush tool and we'll zoom in a little bit and just remove some of the pink tint that we're seeing in the eyes here as well. Yep, that looks good. Next thing we're going to do is just add a little bit of clarity to the hair as well. Just little subtle changes that you can't really tell that much by themselves, but once they're all put together, it makes a huge difference. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is go to the adjustment sliders and just add a little bit more green into the image as well. Okay, so I think that's pretty much everything for Camera Raw. One final thing we'll do is just smooth the arms here a little bit as well. So resetting our brush, just dropping the clarity a little bit, and then just adding a little bit of smoothness to the hands. Okay, so now let's jump into native Photoshop and finish off this image. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove any blemishes from the skin, and there aren't really that many here at all. Actually can't really see any. There's just a couple of little ones here. Laura actually has really good skin, so it makes my job super easy. Only have a little bit of work to do here to smooth the skin. And this is a step you can skip, but I just like getting skin super smooth because I think it makes the image look just that little bit better. So I'm just using the patch tool here, circling what I don't like and pressing delete. Because this layer is locked, it's going to do a content aware deletion. But what you can also do is you can just circle an area and then drag it somewhere else, and then that moves the pattern from what it was to what it looks like where you dragged it. So I think that's pretty much all we'll do for that. The next thing I'm going to do is just make the hair pop a little bit more. So we're going to go to the filter liquify and just add a little bit more volume to the hair. And this is something I do all the time, just because I think that no matter how great your hair looks, it always looks just a little bit better if you make it a little bit more full and thick. So don't go crazy with this, and make sure you don't warp anything too much either. Just little adjustments here and there make a huge difference. So before and after. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to clean up a little bit of the ground, and then that will be pretty much it for this photo. Just removing any distractions that I think detract from the photo. Okay, so one final thing is I'm just going to go back into Camera Raw, and you can see here, you can see, I've just selected something there. Okay, so let's try that again. Filter, Camera Raw. You can see here that the feet here are a little bit more purple than the rest of the skin, so I'm just going to get a paintbrush tool, add a little bit of yellow and remove a bit of the pinks, and also just get rid of that clarity adjustment as well, and then just see what works here. So maybe what I'll do is I'll just add a little bit of yellow, and then I'll also remove some of the saturation, and then go a little bit more green too. So just removing a little bit there, and I think that is everything for this photo. So I really hope you like this photo and you found the video interesting. Please leave a like and subscribe if you did, and remember there are raw files in the description if you would like to edit along and edit these for yourself. Thank you to everyone who's been sending them to me on Instagram as well. I really enjoy looking at everyone's edits. It might take a little bit of time for me to post them just because my internet is really slow, but I will make sure to post them eventually, so I'm looking forward to everyone editing these photos and sending them back to me. All of the equipment I used for this photo shoot is also going to be in the description, so make sure if you're looking to get any more equipment to check that out. I'm going to have the exact equipment that I use on this photo shoot, and on every other photo shoot that I do. So once again, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.